Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thank you for being here, and welcome to 2025, everybody. I hope you all had an excellent holiday. I know I did. I got to spend a good amount of time with family around Christmas and Hanukkah this year. Got to eat a lot of my favorite holiday dishes. Always very exciting time for me, food wise, around the holidays. And I hope you had some joy this holiday season as well. 2024, I had some challenges in terms of consistency with the show because honestly, I found myself stretched very thin between the podcast work and the band. It's something I'm going to try to rededicate myself to because I love this podcast and I know that I enjoy doing it. This is one of those. This is something I don't think it's. This is something I've seen like YouTube creators discuss a lot. I wouldn't necessarily call it burnout, but there's certainly lulls where you really need to rededicate yourself and power through the work sometimes when you're just sort of like when you're just sort of like and you feel like you're hitting your head against wall. So that's where I'm at. I'm also like trying to be physically healthier. I've been ahead of all the New Year's resolution people. I have been trying to consistently get back into the gym a couple times a week, and I've been having some success with that, which is I think started to show some results in terms of physical stamina. Because my fitness goals, folks, are very, very modest. I want 2XL shirts to fit, and I want to be able to travel and go all around a city 10,000, 15,000 steps a day and not be tired or need a break. That's what I aspire to in terms of my physical stamina, because I have just never been in good cardiovascular shape. Every time I look at my Fitbit and it tells me my cardiovascular fitness is poor, I'm like, I know. I've never been able to consistently run for a very long distance and not be absolutely annihilated. But I am slowly, incrementally able to do like 30-second sprints at a time. So that's what I call progress, folks. And that's the sort of energy I'm going to bring into 2025 on this podcast with my band Skip Lag and with comedy. Those in my artistic pursuits. I have never. I'll be honest, folks. The pandemic messed me threw my rhythm off. I had a pretty consistent for the. Oh my gosh, this will be my 15th year in New York City this summer. I had a pretty consistent rhythm in terms of performing comedy, and I think in the midst of the pandemic and the loudening of the cultural discourse between the two camps of comedy that I find myself navigating in between, in terms of like the we talk about this, you can't talk about this sides. I've never subscribed to much of that. I've just subscribed to write a good joke and be messed and like be fucked up, like say some risque things, but have a good punchline. That's always been my my sort of overwhelming rule. But I also think that just saying offensive or shocking words is not brave. It's not courageous. What I think is courageous is to be really vulnerable and funny on stage at the same time, and not always in the one-man show Edinburgh Fringe sort of way of doing comedy. But I think to go on stage and say some personal uncomfortable truths, that's real courage. And that's a kind of courage that I'm trying to find again in 2025. The other simple big change is that my life is very, very different now from when the pandemic hit and stand-up stopped. So I have to go back out and try to find out who I am on stage, how I'm funny on stage, what are the jokes I'm writing, rebuild that muscle, same way I'm rebuilding muscles and my cardiovascular, going up and down the Stairmaster or doing interval sprints. I got to rebuild that muscle as well. But the one muscle that I know I still have is talking about pop punk music. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, pop punk music is kind of a reoccurring theme. And one of my favorite things to do around this time of year, and this is what we're going to do today, is have my good friend from Backdoor Barbecue, Paul Cohen, back on the show to talk about our favorite songs, our favorite shows, our favorite moments from the year that is the punk rock scene and all of its sort of, the umbrella term I've always used is Warped Tour music, and which is also pressing because Warped Tour will be returning this year. But this is something that kind of became a holiday tradition a few years ago, and it's something that I look forward to continuing to do every year. And it's one thing in art that I like is when art makes me feel less alone, because I don't know if anyone else ever feels like this, but I feel like it is very easy to feel very lonely in modern society. Does anyone else ever feel like that? Like, I feel like I'm around people all the time. I know people. I communicate with people, and I'm married, so I'm not alone. Sometimes I feel sometimes it's a strange feeling. Still feels lonely sometimes. And that's a very odd place to find myself. It's very in stark contrast to my surroundings. Maybe that's something that me and you can work on as well in 2025, is trying to make sure that we spend time with friends. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Backdoor Barbecue will have more shows at the Pit, the People's Improv Theater in New York City all through this year. So check the Pit NYC for details. And let's talk to my friend Paul Cohen about our favorite thing in the world, pop punk, and what we loved in 2024.
Not really. I just added a couple of things that were missing for me.
Yeah, well, I've been like, every time I listened to an album, I was always like so excited, like, oh, this has to go on the end of year list. So I was always like, oh, this will be great. I want to make sure I remember this. And as a result, like, I think we have like 24 albums.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like real quick before we start, like we could maybe run through our top few. Like, oh, you go, I go, you go, I go.
Oh, sure.
Maybe
I'm recording, by the way.
Oh, shoot.
It's okay.
Hey, guys. We planned this out in advance. We are super profesh. And then, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, man. How you doing?
Dude, I'm good. It's been a year, and I'm happy to be back. I'm in the 5-timers club. I don't even know how many times I've been
easily.
on.
I think we're up to like 6 now.
I know. I can't believe you keep having me back on.
Well, because I always like, because when we did this the first time, it sort of became like a fun little tradition. I looked forward to repeating it every year now, because there's always there's always like so much cool stuff to talk about, and you're the guy I like talking about it with.
Yeah,
so.
and it's very natural, because this isn't like doctored up. Like, Will and I talk about this all year long.
All the time.
So
yeah, basically.
It's not just like we're like, hey man, let's just get together once a year. We're constantly like, yo, check out this single, check out this album, blah, 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 back and forth.
Oh no, constantly. And what I found is lots of times, because I never knew like when a single would lead into like another album or an EP. So sometimes when the album would come out, it would be kind of like a fun surprise to like incorporate the album into the list based off of the single.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so used to the old school way of like a radio single comes out and then an album with 12 to 15 tracks comes out. And that really hasn't been the way in so long. Now, like, bands just released like albums here and there. They release EPs. They'll release just one-off singles.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, the only one-off singles you would ever have if it was on a soundtrack.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And then sometimes you'd have to buy an entire movie soundtrack just to get that one song pre-iTunes.
Yeah.
And then it was there was like sometimes where you could get like your soundtrack single unless it was a dreaded album only release. Remember when iTunes used to get you with that a bunch?
Well, I still use Apple Music, and I don't know if they do that anymore. Actually, I'll take that back. I was going to say I think they still do that, but I don't think they do actually, because now it's just you're not paying per album. It's just you pay 1 fee per month, listen to whatever you want. I say this every year, but I feel like I can't switch at this point. But man, all I really want to see is what my festival lineup would look like for my listens, like on Spotify. That's all I want in life. I mean, I can tell you exactly what it would say.
Newfound Glory 12 times, and then Mest, and then some new bands.
Yeah, and if someone was reading it wrong, they'd be like, wow, Mest is headlining this festival, and like, you know, because then I'll slip in like a random pop song. I'm like, wow, Sabrina Carpenter is opening for Mest.
Not gonna lie, that would be a really banging lineup. I would go to that show.
I would do it.
No, because before we dive into pop punk, like I felt like this year, and I'll say the back end of 2023 as well, just had a ton of like really great pop albums as well. Like Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet was a big one for everyone, and then I feel like Chapel Roan, who I called Chappelle Roan until I heard somebody else say her name.
You're like, I'm going to Chappelle show.
Right. I was just like HOTTOGO.
You hear that new Chappelle single?
Yeah, it's really different. It's very different stylistic slant. So I like to include those as well because again I think pop songwriting is all over the music we listen to, and I genuinely think if once you nail that formula, it is a crowning achievement of yourself as a songwriter to nail like a super catchy simple song.
Yeah, I'll admit something that I'm not even that embarrassed to admit. I'll put it out there. You had asked like what's your favorite non-pop punk album of the year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I listen to country because that's a gross misunderstatement. But there was like a song on the last State Champs album that featured this guy Mitchell Tenpenny, right?
Yes.
He's also featured on an album I'll talk about later. And I just was like, oh, I like this guy. And I like downloaded his new album and I like listened to it a few times. And I was like, oh, I mean, it's more like pop country. Even he has a little bit of the pop punk songwriting aspect to him. Like he'll cover like Green Day or Blank when he plays country shows, which I think is cool. But so maybe I'm growing up.
I think there's a lot more crossover between country and pop punk, and I feel like it started to happen in the last few years, like especially with Act Like That. That's the song that you're listening to, because that was like a top song for me for like 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
I also discovered this guy Nico Moon, and he has a song called "Ain't No Better Place," and that is like a very like just straight up very positive pop country song. The song is about like how small towns are cool, and
I'm gonna download it.
Very much, and very much not what pop punk ever sings about, except I think maybe The Greatest Generation. They have a couple songs about wanting to go back to the suburbs or die in the suburbs.
Yeah.
But that song, that song in particular was particularly strong. I really enjoyed that. In terms of like non-punk albums, like this year, I had a couple of like good ones, but probably like the number one for me, and it's kind of adjacent because I would call this guy more like folk punk, but Undefeated by Frank Turner was just an amazing album.
Yeah, I think I would say adjacent. Well, he's definitely not pop punk, but he's kind of punk, I would say, or at least
he's
adjacent.
very punk in attitude, and I would call like folk punk very much a punk genre, but his songwriting is just like so deep, and I especially loved the song "Show People" because it's all about the struggles of being a touring musician. And it just really resonated with me the first time I heard it, listening to the album.
Awesome. And then the biggest pop news of the year was Taylor Swift gave a shout out to Starting Line in one of her songs.
I know. Yeah. That was so. I loved. First of all, I loved that she did that. Yeah. I was trying to think. Well, how could that? Because I know she's a fan of like emo and punk rock and like pop punk music. Like she's sung with Dashboard Confessional. She's had Jim from Jimmy Eat World play songs with her at.
She's on a Boys Like Girls song once.
She's on a Boys Like Girls song. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah,
like she has some absolute bona fide scene credentials, I think. And
she's basically pop punk.
So it wouldn't surprise me that she would have like a love of Drive-Thru Records era bands, especially like the band from Pennsylvania. Because isn't she from Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought it was like probably like an ex-boyfriend listened to all that music or something, but it's still cool. I would say she's arguably. I mean, I'm thinking about my lifetime, and this is no disrespect to some other big pop stars that came along, but she is so big. I'm like. The only person I could even imagine at their height being as big as Taylor Swift was like Michael Jackson in his height. Like there's just like they're in a different echelon than most pop artists, I would say. Even ones that are like super successful, because she's got like crazy tours, she's got pop culture relevancy, she touches anything, football ratings go up. She's got easy, recognizable songs that'll be hits for years and years and years. I mean,
yeah.
I don't want to talk about Taylor Swift so much on this pop punk podcast.
Well, dude, because and like pop punk bands cover Taylor Swift all the time. One of my favorite albums by some buddies of mine, Eternal Boy. I saw them when they came through New York recently. They covered Taylor Swift and did a pretty good job of it too. So again, I think there's still a lot of crossover. So like when someone like Taylor Swift like mentions, I think a pretty important band for us, that to me is a really big deal. Like maybe, if we could get like we get a little bit of that Swiftie exposure on the scene, I think that's going to be a good thing.
I would say Starting Line to me is one of the most underrated, and I know maybe because their shelf life was so small, but to me they were one of the most underrated bands like of that era. You know?
I know.
I was gonna say like, oh, maybe Newfound Glory, but Newfound Glory had tons of radio hits, and people give them that respect level of like they're the godfathers of pop punk. And I'm like, I think the Starting Line like never quite reached the critical heights, never kind of got the cred, but people just love. Like I love them. I still the other day I put on the movie one. It's probably a very obvious name that I'm forgetting.
From the Screen to Your Stereo.
No. The Starting Line album.
Oh, based on a true story.
Based on a true story. With the movie cameras on the cover that looked like they were like 10 years old at the time. And I was like, man, this is it's actually my favorite Starting Line album, not the most popular one. I just think the album's gem from start to finish. But I think I'm alone in that, but I love that album.
Yeah, that album, I feel like amongst like the fans probably ranks lower, because obviously you say it like you mean it would be up top, and I know there's a lot of love for Islands as well, but that has some very underrated songs. Like Surprise Surprise is a absolute like classic, like sort of like tell off your ex kind of song. Ready, I think I remember seeing them live a bunch around that time, and Ready was always played live, and it always
great,
is just played really well. It's just such a great song.
Yeah, I everything. If you actually listen to that album, the lyrics are actually really, really good. Like I said, from start to finish, I feel like there's so many good gems on that album. I'm trying to think of the name of that song I love a lot. I think it's Photography. I think, is that the one where like swing from a streetlight? I'm not going to try to sing it. I love that song.
With that,
I saw them play that live. I saw them play that live once at Starland Ballroom before the album came out. They were like, we're going to play a new song. It was like their Christmas show, I think. So there were like lights everywhere. They turned down the lights. And normally when bands play a new song, you're like, ugh, all right. And I feel like that was just like by the end of that song, everyone was kind of doing the and it was like this cool experience where everyone was bought in and just it was just mellow enough and just catchy enough that it worked.
Mm-hmm. I love like seeing new songs win over a crowd. That's really awesome.
Because it never happens
when that happens. well, yeah, because like I feel like especially like the expectations, especially if you go to see a band, because you can't. I'm also of the age where I can't like I'm not out every night at shows, just ready to give you what you give me. Sometimes I have, if I'm going to see a specific band, I'm looking to hear specific songs. Mm-hmm. So hearing something new and enjoying it is really exciting. I even when we saw Blink this summer, and they played one of the new songs from One More Time, the deluxe edition, even though Tom like didn't have his guitar on for half the song,
which I didn't realize. I thought that was how the song was.
Yeah, but I thought it was. I didn't notice until like halfway through.
I thought it was a choice.
Yeah, exactly. But that song is like one of my favorites from the new batch of songs. And
maybe next time they play, Tom's guitar will work. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I one other thing I'll say about the starting line is similarly, like they occupy like a very kind of specific place. I think they had those 3 records, then they have been part-time for, I would say, what are we going on now? Almost. Yeah, something like 10 or 15 years.
I saw their last show once. I think I might have seen their last show twice. They've had like 10 last shows.
Well, they do that holiday show in Philly every year, and it's always sold out. And they do, I think they've done When We Were Young. They do like the big like one-off like little runs and festivals now. And honestly, good for them.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of where. I think it was at Skate. No, I wasn't Skate. It was Bamboozle. I was with like my friend's band, and definitely with who was there. And I remember this. Shout out to Greg, the Pooh Bear.
Yes.
Because that starting line is one of his favorite bands too. And I remember like the 3 of us were like, I can't believe we're here for this. Like a year later, they're like, joke, we're gonna film this DVD going away in Philly. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad that they're doing that, because there's really no reason to not just be a band forever. Maybe you're not a full-time band forever, but you can always be a band for as long as you want to be. That's the cool thing.
I'm not naive. I think a lot of those is like it's our last show only is like a ticket sale tactic, and I'm okay with it. I get it, and I think maybe they believe at that time there is, but like no one else believes it. It's too easy nowadays, like with just nostalgia. I think of like when we were young, Warped Tour is coming back. It's just all of us that listen to this music have 10 times the amount of disposable income that we had.
Yes,
and these bands are still, a lot of these bands are probably in their 30s and 40s, so they could easily still do this. Maybe they can't. Maybe a lot of them are going to tour full time. There's really no reason not to. It seems like a win for everyone. Some promoters getting rich. The bands are probably like saving themselves from defaulting on their mortgage, and the fans, we get what we want. Like it all. Why not? It's kind of like movies, like TV shows. For example, Malcolm in the Middle is coming back for a short run.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's so random. Scrubs rerun. I'm like, you know what? Just keep doing it. I'm fine with it. Anyone who says otherwise is boring.
Yeah, at this point, I'm like, let's get people employed. Let's get crews employed. Let's get people some joy. That's kind of what I'm thinking. On the subject of bands going away and final tours, got to talk about Sum 41.
Will, that was a great segue, and I almost,
thank you.
I'm not gonna lie, I signed in on a guest on the app we're using, and I almost signed in as Brown Sound or Cone because I thought it'd be funny, but I don't know.
Well, I do see that you're doing the I'm a disaster, a microphone master.
Yeah, you could tell the genesis of it. Yeah,
yeah. Oh no, I definitely could. I've been reading Derek's autobiography, so I've had Sum 41 like on the mind a lot this year. So I have, and that concert, because they played the Brooklyn Paramount in downtown Brooklyn back in May when I saw them, and it was a crazy show, like a super crazy show, and it made the lineup made total sense.
Were the Interrupters the opener? I think
the Interrupters were direct support, and then there was
God,
another.
I love the Interrupters. Does anyone know who they are? Like, are we the only? Like, I love them. They're great.
No, people know who the Interrupters are. They are amazing, and I've seen them open for a lot of different bands. I saw them open for Green Day this year too. They are like one of my favorite new bands, relatively new bands, and their songs are great. They put on such a incredibly entertaining show. Love everything about it.
That's great, man. Throw on some Kerosene. I like that song.
Yeah, Kerosene's good.
I can see myself like skanking to it.
Yeah, I love Raised by Wolves. I love that what's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Take back the power. Really, that's a good one. She got arrested. I like that one.
There's one I love so much, and maybe it's Title Holder.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Fight like a title holder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good psych up one as well. But when I kid you not, dude, when I saw the crowd, like I sacrificed a watch to that mosh pit.
You're like, I got it. Yeah.
Got it.
Your last chance. For now, as we just discussed.
It was one of the most like wild crowds I've been in relatively recently. They started hard. They had a nice little like mid-tempo section, and then we ended hard, and we were all just like jumping up and down. And I was especially excited because after the first encore, a lot of the crowd left, but then Derek came back out and sang a song by himself on piano. That was really amazing. I'm so glad I got to see that.
That's cool, man. Yeah, it was. I mean, what did they play? Like, It Makes No Difference. Like, did they go to some old stuff?
They did. They played that. They played Summer. They like played really the full range of their catalog. They played a bunch of old stuff as well as a ton of stuff from the new album. And what I also found cool is they and this makes a little bit more sense after having read Derek's book. They played a lot of stuff from Underclass Hero, which I don't think that album got enough love at the time, but now it's objectively very good. The songs are very good. Just think in the context of Dave having left the band recently, it does, and I also like didn't have the money to like really buy it at the time, so so I feel like it just sort of like kind of got overlooked coming off of Chuck.
Yeah, I think it suffered a little bit because the single kind of felt like, let's recreate Fat Lip a little. And I'm going to be honest, because I know we're going to talk about the album. Maybe it's just transition to the album. It's like, I like their pop stuff better than their metal stuff. But
I do too.
Their pop stuff works when it has like the metal twinge to it. And for example, like In Too Deep, that guitar solo, it's just like thrown in there. And it fits so perfect. You know, and so I think there's stuff like that, but I ultimately like them more on the pop side. Like I will say, my favorite song from the album is the very first song on the album. I think "Waiting on a Twist of Fate." Like, that to me is like when they marry the styles in the best way. Personally.
Oh no, totally. That's like a great crossover. That song kind of represents everything that I think they do and do really well, is that sort of like pop punk framework, but then let's also put some metal decorations on it. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and that's a really cool. I saw them like a year ago, and they were pretty awesome. I mean, I don't know. Their first full length album, I think it's still that might be a top 10 pop punk album for me, like total. It's so good.
All killer, no filler.
Yeah.
No, that to me is an absolute classic of that era. Like there's not a single bad song on that album. Every one of those albums is essential.
You know, it'd be a fun concept if we each ranked our top 10 pop punk albums and then went my 10, your 10, my 9, your 9. Went back and forth.
Whoa, that would be fun.
And we can't show each other before. But,
right, like we just have to go in completely blind.
Yeah, and just maybe our list will line up. I could also see them like there'll be a few that will line up, but I could see it being different, or at least different order? We listen to so much stuff.
No, we do. I could see. Yeah, I could see. I could also see finding some difficulties in trying to like pick my like 7 and 6, because like what would determine like the difference between a 7 and 6? Like very top, I could see being easy, but then like filling out those bottom parts, because I know I'm going to leave out something that's really great. Like I'm going to have like a 10 album honorable mention list.
I know, yeah, because it's going to be tough. Because there's also going to be that band where you're like, I really want this band to like, even though it's just our list, like it's not like we're like AP or Rolling Stone or Punk Rock NBA. We're not like throwing it out there, but it's just, I'm like, I don't know. I want this band to be on Paul's list. I want them to know I care.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right.
And they're like, who are you? Who are you, man?
Yeah. So I would also say one of my other favorites from Heaven and Hell is Dopamine. That was another really, really great song. I loved the lyrics of that. I thought the lyrics of that were just amazing.
They're good. They've been through a lot, man, that band.
They have, and I'm in reading Derek's book. He's been through a lot more than I think we even realize. Like, have you heard any of the press around his book at all?
No, but I remember when he almost died. Like, not to put it so bluntly, but I'm sure there's a big chunk of the book is talking about that. He also had very public breakups, probably addiction issues, I assume, band breakups. I mean, I feel like, and they're big here, but aren't they like mega big in Canada? You know, they're like.
Yeah, when I talk to band folks in bands from Canada, Sum 41 comes up pretty regularly. Almost damn near every single time. And Steve-O32's got a very fun YouTube channel that I think he just started this year.
It's come up on my YouTube like recommended thing. I haven't watched one yet, but you know what it is? I don't know. Is it him being like negative on Sum 41, or is it not?
It's basically the stories behind certain songs, and then he usually will play them on drums.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like playthroughs and storytelling. It's pretty interesting. I'm not a drummer, so I don't relate to it as much, but it is very interesting to hear like the stories behind moments of Sum 41, or like he reacts to videos, really old singles and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm a desk drummer, you know. No, I don't know if you can pick that up, but I'm jamming out.
Oh no, I think I did get a little bit there. One other thing that I wanna mention is with Warped Tour returning, I don't think they've announced any of the lineup yet, but I think it's already sold out.
I assume so. I have a friend in Florida who was like, "Should I go?" They haven't announced the bands. And I looked at the ticket price, and I was like, "You can guess who the headliners is." You know, like you're going to have some combination on the high end of a Blink, a Green Day, a Fall Out Boy, a My Chem, Paramore, you know, and I guarantee you just have like a hodgepodge of all the bands who've just done it 5 or more times.
Yeah, I hope that they would be really going through the deep cuts of the lineup to really get a nice representative sample of that era. Like, because my first Warped Tour was 2005, and then I think the last one I went to was 2008. So that was like at the height of like emo and metalcore on the tour as well. So I think that would be where you would start.
Yeah, I know. I used to go to. I probably was a few years before you. So when I started going, it was sort of when pop punk was breaking through. So the lineups were still a little more heavily towards like the NoFX's, Bad Religion's, Bands of the World, which I liked. I thought it was always cool seeing that mix. And then I remember like when I started going, I'm sure people were like, "Oh, pop punk's here. This is the end of Warped Tour." And then I think when Screamo got big, someone was like, "Oh, this is the end of Warped Tour." And then emo got big, and someone was like, "Oh, it's the end." But I bet you all those bands get along pretty well. They don't care.
I absolutely bet they do, because it's less about like if I like your particular song, and then especially on Warped Tour, I feel like the hang is so important. Of course, unless you're like trying to. I remember reading some story. I guess Under Oath was like doing like Bible study, and like Fat Mike was being a jerk or something.
Did I ever tell you my Fat Mike Warped Tour story? Or I don't know.
No, I don't know if I've heard the story. No.
Oh, so one year, my friend, I think it was like Joan Jett was on the Warped Tour, and my friend worked for Joan Jett. So we got these like backstage passes, and we were, I don't even think it was No Effects. I think it was Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. So we're like, oh, and then I think we get like watch it from the side and stuff. We're like, oh, let's check out Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. So we go backstage. My friend, she's attractive, and I see my Mike was like, comes up, shooting the shit with her. And you could tell he's a little, off his game a little bit. And he was holding this red Solo cup, and he was so fucking nice. Like, he was just talking to us. He was so cool, so nice. And then, like, he moved in a certain way, and it was like either his cup splashed or I just smelled it, and I was like, holy shit, that's all vodka. Like, that isn't water. Yeah. That is 100% vodka. And then we watched the set, and I was like, yeah, it definitely was.
Yeah, that tracks. Yeah, that tracks
yeah.
up on mine.
But I saw he did post when the drummer from My Chem died a few month or so ago, and he actually said that the Black Parade's a perfect album, and that made me think about that and be like, oh, they are all friends. Like backstage, as long as you're cool, as long as you're not an asshole, I don't think they treat each other like that unless you're not cool,
Exactly. Like I heard Alien Ant Farm one year didn't really hang out, and as a result, they kind of weren't like best friends with the rest of the tour.
Yeah. And they probably regret that for their whole career because they probably could have latched onto that scene and sold a hell of a lot more records. But
I could imagine so. The other, since we're on the topic of Fat Mike, No Effects closed out 40 years this year. The thing I remember most from that final show, because footage of that is everywhere. I don't know if you saw, but Fletcher from Pennywise was there, and he went on a instrument smashing frenzy.
I didn't see that, but I saw when like a million bands joined him on stage.
Oh yeah, the entire stage was filled up, but poor Mike Herrera's very nice orange Stingray bass got smashed by Fletcher.
R.I.P. Mike Herrera's bass.
I think he got him back a few months later, though. I think he smashed one of Fletcher's things. But I felt in that moment for that bass. But no, 40 years of being a punk rock band. That is insane to me. That because I've heard interviews with Mike where he was like, yeah, this was never going to be, when we started, this was never going to last more than a couple of years. This was never going to be a career. So that 40 years to me is amazing.
I mean, if you work 40 years for a company, you're retiring. It actually makes a lot of sense.
No, it definitely does. I imagine they'll all still do something. I don't know what, but they will all still do something.
I'm sure. Or, all right, here's a question for you. We'll save this in the bank. Do Sum 41 or No Effects do another show at some point?
I definitely wouldn't say that's not a possibility. I just would want to know what context it would happen in. I could see them like coming together for some sort of like really important cause to do a show, maybe raise money or awareness on some sort of future catastrophe that will befall the country. I could see that.
Probably like a social issue, like something's happening and they're like, hey, let's all do this big show and raise money and give it to a fund for XYZ.
Exactly, because like Sum 41 have always been pretty like socially aware. Like the chapters in Derek's book are about like getting stuck in the Congo.
Oh yeah, the whole Chuck album was that, right?
Yes, the whole Chuck album is named after the guy who got them out. That story is so much more intense than I had ever heard it told before. It is wild that they got through that. Like we're talking about like it's a really good, this will be the first book recommendation of the end of year podcast. Derek Wilby's Walking Disaster is fantastic.
I hate reading though.
Audiobook.
Yeah, sure. I did buy a book on your recommendation this year and then I got it and I was like, Will, this is like a book. I thought it was gonna be a picture book.
Oh, it's got, that book has pictures in it. The Japan book.
Yeah.
You just got to flip further back.
which I mean, we'll close it out with we are going to see a concert together this year. Where it's already on the books. Tickets booked, flights
yes.
booked.
Yes, it is. That's going to be pretty exciting. I can't wait for that. But some of these, one of these other, before we get into the albums, one of these the other concerts I saw is wife Chelsea and I just followed Green Day around the world. Quite literally. When I saw them, the Interrupters, the first time this year, it was when they were opening for Green Day in Paris, and it was phenomenal.
Can I laugh about that comment? Because I'm staring. We wrote some notes for the pod before. So Will's like, we travel the world to see Green Day, and then in our notes it says Will sees Green Day ... in Paris, in New York, and the third one it's like in Philly.
Well, that was where the third. That was the third.
No,
the third show was.
I know, but like Paris and New York, and then Philly's like you're like No, I mean,
like
maybe I just hate on Philly. I hate on Philly a lot.
Well, it seems like I'm going down in descending cities of glamour for sure, but
for sure, Philly's on.
But I did have some amazing ice cream in Philly on my way to that concert. But the Paris show is wild because it ended right on time, which I've never had a show end like right on time.
Oui.
And what was also really interesting to watch is how each crowd reacted to different eras, because it was the Saviors tour, but they were playing Dookie and American Idiot front to back because it was 30 years of Dookie, 20 years of American Idiot. Wow. So it's really cool it's really interesting to see the Paris crowd pop harder for the songs from American Idiot.
I mean, that's just a huge album. Like, it's amazing that those two albums were 10 years apart because they were both huge. Like, it's rare that a band ever gets one album that big, and to have two. And those 10 years felt like 20 if you like think of what happened between those, like 94 and 2004.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that biased because, I was so young. So those 10 years, like, everything in my life changed. So it probably didn't in the real world, but like, 94 was such a different time. Then you go through, I don't know, I guess 9/11 and digital revolutions or anything. Like, it really was a very different like landscape as a country, or world.
Yeah. A lot changed in a short period of time.
Yeah. Well, I'm just hoping that when we go away, I promise everyone I won't be a Japanese idiot. Because I know everyone's kind of worried.
I think you'll be all right. Like, you have a generally pretty good sense of who you are, and
I will do that.
Politeness. Yeah, as long as you handle that, I think you'll be all right. Just like think of like the most polite you could be in any given situation, and do that, and you're good.
I'm good when I have to be, but sometimes when I'm just with my friends, I'm like, I'm gonna make inappropriate jokes and see how far I can push it. I won't do that in public. Don't worry.
Oh no, for sure. Another album I really wanted to talk about before we get into some of our mutual faves is one that it is the oddest album I listened to this year. It really, and very rarely can I say that I listen to something where I'm like, this is unlike anything I have heard before. Bill Murray's American Motorsports. Yeah. It's country, it's metal, it's gent, like really like 8-string guitar, like chuggy, kind of riffing, sort of modern metal. But then it has these like very tuneful country choruses. Mm-hmm. It was so confusing to listen to the first time, but it was really catchy.
I love it. I don't know what it is about it, and maybe I'm even off that I consider it like pop punk in its own right, but I just think it's so good. I'm trying to think of what the guy is from. He's from. Remember that there was like a band, Attack. They're a big scene band.
Yeah,
so that's the guy who
the Crabcore band. Yeah,
yeah. So
they
were
the synth metal.
Mm-hmm. So that was them. But man, I really feel like it's this weird marriage of like metal, pop punk, country, and wrestling entrances.
Right, kind of. It definitely feels like early 2000s, sort of like SummerSlam at times, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, I think what kind of ties it all together, and it's something I kind of mentioned earlier, I feel like I mentioned earlier, is chorus, like hooks. Like you can have like a really catchy part in any kind of song. That's why, like, it, as weird as it is, it's all kind of cohesive because it all comes back to the hook being really good.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to it, I would say it's kind of like pop punk vocals on other things.
Yeah,
like if I had to really like sum it up. But there's some good, like I mentioned Mitchell Tenpenny early, but there's like this pop singer Knox who's on the album too. And like that's, I don't listen to a lot of pop artists, but he's one that I would listen to. And I don't know, I love the album. I listen to it so much, still do. They just came out with like an extended cut of it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
I was like, oh, is this just something where it's like not much different? And they added like an acoustic song at the end. And then I was like, wait, the first track's a completely different song. Like there's like new, like they just sprinkled in new songs throughout the album. And I'm like, wow, I've never seen that before.
No, I haven't either. I'm used to deluxe editions, like what Blink did this year, where they put out like an album with like almost like an entire EP's worth of new material, but never like alternate takes or like alternate listings of songs. That's interesting.
I think it's a cool idea. I'm usually not to knock Blink. It's not Blink, but I'm usually not the biggest fan of the deluxe albums. Especially with nowadays, I don't see the point of it because like they used to release them and put like the 8 B-sides on the back of it and then sell it again. But because we stream everything now, you're not actually buying it again. So part of me is like, just release a new EP. But that's a hot take.
No, I know what you mean. The only reason I could think of is for marketing reasons, because they were on the One More Time tour.
That makes a lot of sense,
year.
Actually.
But I liked a lot of those new songs, like Can't Stop or No Fun. No Fun I thought was pretty interesting. Like, again, very sort of like, you could tell they're all getting along, so everybody gets to, like, it's really displaying everything that they like to do in every song. And I'm here for it.
It almost felt like they were like, hey, I know you really like X music, so I'll try it. I'm in. Like, you know. God, I hope this honeymoon lasts, though. I think it will. But
I do too. Especially if they take a little time to take a break and do their other stuff. I think that'll just continue to keep the good vibes going. Yeah, is what I'm hoping. And since we're talking about Green Day, what did you think of Saviors?
I liked it a lot. It's weird because
Me too.
It had this like Americana vibe to it. But there are some songs on there. I should have wrote all this stuff down. That I like really liked on there.
Like Bobby Sox or The American Dream is Killing Me. That was another good one that I really liked. Maybe it's
Corvette Summer. I don't know. There's one song. It's just so catchy. It has like a cowbell in it. I really think it's Corvette Summer.
Yes, and I think you are correct. Dilemma I really liked as well.
It's a very, I remember it being chill. I haven't listened to it in a few months probably, but I remember it being like kind of chill. You know, like it wasn't amped up to 11. I'm not saying that's like a bad or good thing. It was just like it had its own flavor. Like it was clearly Green Day, but it didn't sound like a copy of another Green Day album.
To me, it's my favorite album they've done since American Idiot, because I thought 21st Century Breakdown had a couple of really standout songs, but I didn't go back and listen to that album over and over again. Uno Dos Tres didn't really do much for me. Revolution Radio had some good songs on it. And then Father of All Motherfuckers, I only ever listened to once.
All right. Well, I'm going to say the same because I did go back and listen to Saviors and put some songs on playlists. So I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I just think like there were some really like standout catchy songs on there, and it has this sort of like, it's clearly like a pop punk album, but then it also has this very like early rock and roll sort of vibe to like the guitar tones as well, and
that's
some
what
of
I was trying to say.
Lyrical themes. Like it feels vintage.
I feel like to listen to it, I would need to be in like an old Corvette going down like a road in the West, with like a Route 66 sign, and then pull into like an old diner. That's like one of those diners that looks like those capsule like metallic outdoors.
Yeah.
I can't even describe it, but just look up diner, Google diner.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's how I would describe the album. It's not a
like
good
like a 50s diner.
Yeah,
like the movie Diner. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Diner, directed by Sidney Lumet, but that is a very classic like Americana, set in Baltimore during like the 50s. Very iconic of like when you picture like Norman Rockwell era America.
Diner. That stars Steve Guttenberg.
And Paul Reiser's in it. It's pretty good movie. I haven't seen it since college. There's so many albums.
Stacked cast, dude. Stacked cast. I won't go into that. But anyway, let's go to another album, guys. Let's see. Here we talk about the 1982 seminal hit Diner.
Oh man, there's so much great stuff on there. For the other ones, since we were mentioning Green Day and Blink before, Blink adjacent, Alkaline Trio came back with a new full length called Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs, and it is one of my favorite things they've done recently. Again, I just thought like the melodies and the choruses were just like so and instantly memorable and catchy, and I loved that Matt was able to leave Blink and then continue to be productive and put out new music.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I was like, are you like, oh, okay, Matt's good in a good place. He put out a good album.
There is a part of me that thought, well, okay, good. He's not wallowing. He's moving on, and I think that's the move to do in a situation like that. Absolutely.
Didn't they lose one of their original members this year though? Alkaline Trio.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that.
All right, I could be wrong.
And having not listened to them for a while, I really dug it, because one of my favorite Alkaline Trio songs is Jack Tongue Green Beers, and this has a lot of those kind of riffs like Bad Time or what was the other the title track Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs,
which is I feel like it reminds me of From Here to the Infirmary. So
yeah, like they didn't lose step with their sort of like punky gothness.
They did lose Grant, the drummer. He left in 2023.
Oh,
so
okay.
I was right.
Oh, right. It's Adam Willard now, right?
That was really good. I would have only known because I just my good friend Google just told me, but you were spot on.
Well, I feel like he is the guy that when a drummer leaves a band in this scene, he's there.
Yeah,
he's been with Ages and Airways. He's been with the Offspring.
I feel like he might. I want to say he even did Good Charlotte for a while, but that might be a lie. He did Social Distortion, Against Me. Yeah, he's all over the place. You're right. He's like, the guy. It's like, all right, he left. Someone left. Get me Adam.
Yeah, he's just sitting waiting for the call for another punk band in distress.
Yeah.
There's so much great stuff. I say this every year, but I feel like another album I want to talk about, a compilation album that came out this year.
Oh, good, because I was going to bring it up next.
Okay, because this is an album that I have been wishing was made for like probably a good portion of my adult life. I've just never wondered who was going to make it or how it was going to get done. Disney put out a compilation album called A Whole New Sound, and it is all of Paul and I's favorite bands covering all of my favorite Disney songs.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm just gonna throw it out there. If you, I know we're gonna say our favorite album. So if you said, Paul, what's the single of the year? And I'm gonna say, hey, it's a cover, but Eye to Eye by Magnolia Park is probably the most listened song.
Yes,
that I've listened to this year, without a doubt. And then credit to Disney, because they did something I really appreciate, is the Godfathers of pop punk, but really the Godfathers of pop punk covers. New Found Glory kicked off the album, which I thought was cool.
Yep. They kick off the album with a song from The Little Mermaid, which I think is perfect because I follow Chad on Instagram and he has a lot of Little Mermaid tattoos. So that's that is like the song for them to do. And also shout out to Disney for putting Paul and I's favorite band, Boys Like Girls, because we use their songs in sketches a lot.
It's true.
Covering in your heart from Tarzan, which is an absolute banger of a Disney song from like an era when I wasn't really paying attention to the Disney originals.
Me too, but I knew the song
because this song is so much better than it needed to be. Like Phil Collins just, I feel like sometimes I've heard stories of like they bring in big artists to work on soundtracks and it doesn't quite work out. Like there's apparently unreleased Sting songs that were from An Emperor's New Groove. I learned from deep diving on the internet.
Like, no.
Yeah, those have never come out. But Phil Collins just dropped an absolute banger of a soundtrack and a killer lead single. And I love the Boys Like Girls cover of this song. Like they really nailed the verses are my favorite part because they really nailed that sort of like mid-tempo kind of like they turn into palm muty kind of rhythm. They did an amazing job with it. Loved it.
I mean, I've grown to have this affinity for Boys Like Girls because for those of you who don't know, every time we do a sketch con, it seems like every show essentially a character has a monologue that's pretty much unwarranted but very big, and Thunder, like the opening chords of Thunder hit, and it's like it allows like the spotlight hits the character. Oh, it's so good. I don't know why it works so well, but it's become, I don't even think the audience knows. It's just become our own inside joke. So
yeah, it's very funny to me and Paul and maybe some other folks in the group, but to me it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Again, bringing this full circle because Taylor Swift and Boys Like Girls collaborated back on their second album. Yeah. And I also loved Go the Distance from Hercules, and I thought We the Kings did an amazing job with that song.
Yeah, and I'm not the biggest We the Kings guy, but they nailed that cover for sure.
Yeah,
I was surprised. Like they're still around, but I guess they are.
Yeah, and then in the video, the lead singer he feels like he looks like he's like been like out in nature, and I mean that in a good way. Like he looks like I feel like all these scene bands had very like carefully manicured images, and now they're looking more like themselves as we've all grown with them.
Yeah. Oh, there was definitely that time where it was a little too much.
Too perfect. Yeah.
It was that mall emo-y scene. Not emo, but like that mall emo scene. It was a lot.
Oh no, for sure, it absolutely was. Another album I want to make sure we get in here, and one that you introduced me to, and I'm not exactly sure where this band came from. I think just the greater pop punk algorithm pushed them to me. But Games We Play.
Oh yeah, so he's signed to like Pete Wentz's label, but I don't know how he got there. It's like one guy, and I think he does all the band, and he gets a backing band to play with them. So I don't really know the story behind it, but that album's so catchy. It sounds to me if someone combined like pop punk with like 90s alt rock.
Yes.
Like that late 90s.
Like Wheatus.
Yeah, like, hey, we're going to talk a little in songs. We're going to, slow it down, have a chorus that's like very rhythmically, almost like speak singing at times. I don't know. I like the album a lot.
Yeah, there's sort of like weird sound effects, and there's like a whole drum solo sketch in the middle of the album. I feel like he might have gotten like popular on TikTok because I
could see that
because he was doing like a video bit on the chorus of not typical me, but the like she likes to party, I like playing Atari. Yeah. They did like different sketches on TikTok and Instagram for like a couple months while they were on tour for that song.
Yeah, there's so many good. There's so many ones I want to mention. I'll just do a blurb on this one. We won't really spend a lot of time on it, but
Yeah,
one
yeah.
album
Let's.
you introduced me to, and I just want to put it out there because it was so fun. But it's
Mhm.
Brass Emo Volume 2 by Millington. It's just 5 pop punk covers by
Yes.
ska, and ska's kind of like I think everyone would agree ska's like the punching bag of all music. Like there's the
Yeah, they get
famous,
picked on a lot.
there's a famous like Brooklyn Nine-Nine thing where Andy Samberg like ska is my personality,
I'll
whatever.
never turn my back
Yeah,
on
I'll never
ska.
turn my back on ska. And I don't know, that's just really fun. And I know they do like I think Ocean Avenue and like My Friends Over You, but it works
Hmm.
really well. It must be so fun to see them live, but that's one of those ones where I'm like, oh, this is fun, you know?
Yes. That was my first reaction to hearing it too. Just instantly, like this is a blast, and I love listening to it. They played a holiday show with Goalkeeper this year, so they're like,
That's awesome.
yeah, they're like their best days are still ahead of them, and I'm really looking forward to seeing
Yeah.
what those are.
We should tell those two to tour, and then we can go see them together.
Right? I would love to see that.
And then you should open for them, and it'd be perfect. Get Skip
I
Lag
mean,
on the bill.
yeah, if we could get, man, there's so many great shows I've seen this year that I would love to have seen Skip Lag on.
Yeah, I mean, Rhode Island is a banger,
Dude, thank you, man. I appreciate you saying that. It was very fun to get like our first song out and to like really like give it a good push, and it's done fairly decently for a first song. I'm pretty psyched with what it's done.
It's catchy, super.
Thank
catchy.
you, man. I appreciate that. People seem to really like it when we play it live. People are really responding to it. Did you check out Internet Friends at all this year?
I think I downloaded it and listened to it once. I did not do a deep dive on it, and I apologize for the police sirens.
For the siren. Hey, it's New York, baby.
Yeah, New York, baby. I have a police station on one corner, like on the side block, a fire station on the other, and 5 hospitals about 3 avenues away. So, and I'm like the ambulance route, so you get a lot of it.
Right. It's a very secure and helpful corridor.
I mean, I will say this: I feel safe. But,
there you go. Yeah.
I tune it out. I forget, and then when I'm like on calls, I'm like, oh, by the way, because it's background noise to me at this point. But
yeah, of course.
Question for you: what would you put before we say our top album? What would you say is your top 3?
My top 3. That's a really great question. I would definitely say my top 3 for the year. I would put Sum 41, Heaven and Hell. That's up there. Then I would go. I'd probably go Green Day, Saviors next, and then and then for the third one, I would want to pick a slightly smaller band, like an up and coming band. I really enjoyed this Calling All Captains EP that I wrote as well. Emotion Sickness. They're a great band from Canada. I believe they're from I can't remember the province, but they're from a more rural province in Canada. But they are incredibly, like, if you love like melodic, emotional sort of pop punk or hardcore, Calling All Captains, Emotion Sickness, it's great.
I actually I think you had told me to download it. I realized I had a lot of their EPs downloaded already.
Oh, nice. How about your top 3?
My top 3. I feel like mine's in a slightly different direction. You have a lot of like old school bands on there. But my top, in no particular order, so I'll say what I want after. But we didn't talk about this one yet. It came out in January, so I think it gets lost. But Neck Deep, self-titled.
Oh, so good.
I just love Neck Deep, and I feel like this album, they were just like, this is just, it almost feels like a live show. It's just like 10 songs. They're all fast. Like, the album just starts and goes. Like, it's like a speeding train. So I'm a huge Neck Deep guy. We already talked about this one. Bill Murray, American Motorsports. I listened to this album so much. I don't know, something about it's just like, it's so unique to me. Like, I've really never heard anything like it. And it's so goddamn catchy with good lyrics, and They even snuck in the Kevin James bit in there of like, shut up and start your engines, which I thought was funny. And then this, I'll give a quick thing on this album. So State Champ self-titled. When I downloaded it, because I like the singles. And the first time I ran through it, I was like, huh. And then I just like kept listening to it and kept listening to it and kept listening to it. And I'm still listening to it. And I'm just like, I love this album. I don't know. I don't know what it is. And I feel like there's like 6 songs that could be singles on it. But there's one of my favorite bands though. So I think they're kind of in that territory of like whatever they put out is going to shoot to the top of my list. But like Golden Years or I forget what it's called, but the song that has like the kind of rap. It's like a set your goals song in the middle, as my friend said. And Clueless is a great song. So many jams on the album.
Yeah,
those were my top 3. Easily the 3 I listen to the most. Awesome.
That is an excellent selection.
Games we play was probably like up there too, but those 3 kind of stood out.
Yeah, as far as like front to back album listens, those are probably, that's why I went with my top 3 there. So it's not too dissimilar to your pick. So in terms of album of the year, I feel like we probably will differ for the first time in a while on this pick. But for me, based on their concert, based on the sheer volume of a double album, for me it's Sum 41, Heaven and Hell.
Yeah. Well, I knew we would differ because we didn't have overlap in our top 3. That's the more rare thing. I think we usually pick a different one, but we usually have a lot of overlap. But for me, and I'm so glad you picked this one out first because my favorite album this year, it's Bill Murray, man. I just I keep listening to this album. Like even if I put it down for a month, I just put it back on. And one of my favorite songs is 2016 Cavaliers. It's a little bit of a slow Midwest emo jam to it, but Chef's Kiss. It's a great song.
Yeah, and so and again, like so different and so like really put like that same attack spirit that started with like crabcore and like putting like synths over the metalcore breakdowns. Continuing that same sort of like, well, let's just put stuff together and see what we can create.
Let's put a slide guitar in there and a violin, a fiddle solo. And it worked. Like when I say that, people are gonna be like, I'm not listening to that. But I swear it works so well. You just have to
give it a shot. It's different. You will definitely remember that song after you listen to it.
Yeah. Oh, dude, what a year. I don't even know what's coming out next year. This year was overload. I felt like there was an album coming out.
Yeah, I felt like literally every like we had like 2 just absolutely classic albums every month the entire year. It was pretty wild. I loved so much stuff that came out this year. It was pretty amazing.
We didn't talk about them, but shout out to Mest. I like the Mest album.
Yes, friend of the show, Tony Lovato. I loved Youth as well.
I'm a big Mest guy, and I just get so excited that they're still putting out stuff, or Tony's still putting out stuff. But it's awesome.
Yeah, dude works really hard, and it was really nice to meet him this year. That was really exciting.
That's so cool.
Another band that tours Japan a lot. We talked a lot about that when he did the show as well, and we could talk more about that next year.
Yeah.
Dude, you know I love doing this episode every year, so thank you again for continuing to be interested in wanting to do it.
Oh, it must be fun. This is just Will and I talk. We're actually probably less animated on here, but we'll get really into these discussions outside. And I don't know. I hope people like download some of these albums and listen to them, and then are like, "Wow, Will, that was really good." That's my hope.
I would. I hope to hear that as well. Maybe I'll put the link to our list in the show notes so that people can go refer to it.
That singles list is a banger of a playlist. So.
Oh yeah, like I'm gonna put that together. I'll put that out. Anything else we can plug before we get out here, Paul?
You know what? I'm just here for the love of pop punk. You know, I probably don't have any shows coming up until March. So I'm here for the love of the game.
Right on, man. Well, I will. I love you, man. I will see you real soon. Okay.
Awesome,
Thanks for doing the show again.
Always. Thanks, man.
That is Paul and I in our purest forms, in the purest forms of ourselves, talking about our favorite music and a lot of exciting stuff to come in 2025. That I can't wait to share with all of you. If you haven't, check out those album of the years. I just listened to Sum 41.7 Hell again, and it is an absolute banger. So make sure you check out some of Paul and I's recommendations. Check the Pit NYC's website for future dates for our sketch group Backdoor Barbecue. And if you enjoyed this podcast and think you know a friend who would be interested in listening to it as well, you can send them to awesomedisaster.com. That has links to everything related to me and what I do. You can follow me on Instagram at willcarry23, at Between Awesome and Disaster. And if you want to go a little bit further in support of the show, you can check out our Patreon as well as our merch store, which are also available on awesomedisaster.com as well. So thank you all again for being here, putting up with my ups and downs in terms of release schedule in 2024. And look forward to new music from Skiplag this year, new episodes of this podcast. And I'm hoping, even though we're into January now, I can convince my wife and co-host to finish out the rest of the Hallmark schedule on the Hallmark After Show podcast. So everybody, thank you again so much for being here. And I'll see you next time between Awesome and Disaster. Take care, everybody.